Ava had been counting down the hours for this moment. After weeks of grueling overtime and back-to-back business trips, she had quietly rearranged her schedule, caught an earlier flight, and even stopped by the best patisserie in the city to pick up her mother's favourite millefeuille and the chocolate hazelnut cake her younger brother always begged for. She imagined their surprised faces, the warm hugs, maybe even a few happy tears. For once, she wanted to be the one bringing joy home, instead of just wiring money or paying bills from thousands of miles away. She didn't ring the doorbell. She wanted it to be a real surprise. Key turning softly in the lock, she stepped inside, slipped off her shoes and padded quietly down the hallway with the ribbon-tied pastry boxes cradled in her arms like precious cargo. The living room light was on. Familiar voices drifted toward her, her mother's slightly nasal laugh, her brother's lazy drawl, her stepfather's low, deliberate tone. Everything felt perfectly normal, until she heard her own name. Ava's probably going to transfer the money by next week anyway. She always does. Ava froze mid-step, one foot still hovering above the wooden floor. She's so predictable, her brother snorted. I just sent her one sad voice message about my motorbike breaking down again and boom, 5 million dong appears in my account the next morning. It's like having a personal ATM that walks and talks. Laughter erupted. Sharp, careless, intimate laughter that people only allow themselves when they think no outsider is listening. Her mother chimed in, voice syrupy with mock pity. Poor thing, she really believes we're proud of her. All those years studying abroad, all those promotions, she still thinks it means something to us. As long as the money keeps coming, I don't care if she becomes CEO of the moon. Stepfather grunted in agreement. We just need to keep her happy enough. A few "we miss you" texts, a couple of family photos on Tet holiday. Tell her she's our pride and joy. That's all it takes. She's been trained so well, like a little puppet who thinks the strings are hugs. Another round of chuckles. Ava felt something cold and heavy sink into her chest. The pastry boxes suddenly seemed ridiculous, fragile, childish, pathetic. Her fingers tightened around the cardboard until the edges bent. She's so desperate to be loved, her brother continued, almost gleeful. Remember last year when I told her I was really struggling mentally and needed money for therapy? She sent 15 million without even asking for receipts. Therapy. I bought a new gaming PC and went to Nha Trang for 4 days. More laughter. Someone clapped slowly like it was a performance worth applauding. Ava stood motionless in the shadowed hallway, less than 5 meters from the people she had spent her entire adult life trying to make proud. The people she had sacrificed sleep, vacations, relationships, and countless weekends for. The people she had told herself, over and over, were worth every exhausting phone call, every guilt-induced transfer, every time she smiled through gritted teeth and said, "It's okay, I'm happy to help." She had believed the lie so completely that she never noticed it was a script they all read from. Now the script was being read aloud, and she was the punchline. Her throat burned, not with tears, not yet, but with something hotter, sharper, more dangerous. The sudden crystalline realization that she had never been loved here. Not once. She had only ever been useful. A mobile ATM, a guilt ATM, a walking bank account with legs, and a credit card. The boxes slipped from her numb fingers and landed with a soft thud on the hallway rug. The sound was small, almost polite, but it was enough. The laughter died instantly. "Ava," her mother called, voice suddenly sweet and startled. "Is that you, sweetheart?" Footsteps approached. Ava didn't move. She didn't answer. She simply stood there, still holding nothing, still surrounded by the faint scent of buttercream and vanilla, while the people who raised her stepped into the hallway and saw her face. For the first time in years, they looked at her and realized she was actually looking back. And what she saw in their eyes was not love. It was calculation, panic, and the tiniest flicker of annoyance that their game might finally be over. Ava felt the last thread of illusion snap inside her chest. She had come home to surprise them. Instead, they had given her the cruelest gift of all, the truth. And with that truth came something she had never allowed herself to feel before, cold, clean, liberating rage. She was done being their puppet. She was done being the fool who paid for the privilege of being used. Tonight, in the hallway of the house she had once called home, Ava finally woke up. And she would never fall back asleep again. Ava still remembered the exact afternoon she signed the divorce papers. It was a grey Thursday in late autumn, the kind of day where the sky looked bruised and the air smelled faintly of wet concrete. She had sat across from Ethan in the lawyer's sterile conference room. Both of them quiet, both of them already gone from each other long before the ink dried. There were no dramatic scenes, no shouting, no last-minute pleas, just two signatures, a quiet exchange of house keys, and the realization that 8 years had ended in less than 45 minutes. She walked out of that building lighter in some ways, heavier in others. The apartment they'd shared in the city centre was his. He'd always paid the mortgage, and she didn't fight for it. What she kept was the small house on the outskirts of the city, a modest 2-story place with a tiny garden, bought in her name alone with the inheritance from her grandmother and years of her own savings. It was nothing extravagant, peeling white paint, a leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, creaky wooden stairs, but it was hers. The only thing really that had ever felt completely hers. She moved back in alone the following weekend. Boxes still half unpacked, she sat on the living room floor eating cold takeout and staring at the blank walls, trying to imagine what a new beginning might look like. That's when the calls started. First her mother, voice soft and trembling. "Sweetheart, you're not going to sell that house, are you? It's so close to us. We could come help you fix it up, make it feel like home again." "You shouldn't be rattling around in that big place all by yourself." Then her brother, casual as ever. "Hey, sis, since you're living out there alone now, maybe I could crash sometimes? Traffic into the city is hell and my roommate's driving me insane. Just a couch, no big deal. You've got that extra room anyway." Her stepfather was more direct but always wrapped in concern. "Ava, that house is too much for one person to maintain, the garden, the roof, the utilities. You'll burn yourself out. Let us come by more often. We'll take care of things. It's what family does." She said yes to all of it, not because she wanted company. She was still raw, still learning how to sleep through the night without reaching for someone who wasn't there, but because saying no felt like betrayal. They were her family. They had worried about her through the divorce. They had called every day to check in. Refusing them now would mean she was selfish, ungrateful, cold. So they came. First for weekends, then for long weekends, then for just a few days that stretched into weeks. Her brother brought friends who left beer cans on the coffee table and muddy footprints on the rugs. Her mother reorganized the kitchen to make it easier for everyone. Her stepfather fixed the leaky faucet, then the gutter, then the fence, each repair accompanied by gentle reminders that this is an investment for the whole family. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the house stopped feeling like hers. The guest room became her brother's semi-permanent crash pad. The garage filled with her stepfather's old tools and half-finished projects. Her mother started leaving containers of food in the fridge labelled "for the family," as though Ava were merely the caretaker of a communal space. When utility bills arrived, they were met with sighs and comments like, "Well, we're all using it, aren't we?" and "You make good money, Ava. It's not fair to make us chip in when you're the one who owns it." She tried to set boundaries once. She sat them down at the dining table she still paid for, hands folded, voice steady, and said, "I love having you here, but this is still my house. I need some space that's just mine. Maybe we can agree on certain days, or at least let me know in advance when people are coming." The silence that followed was thick. Her mother's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. "So after everything we've done for you, after we supported you through that awful divorce, you're going to push us away?" We just want to help. We thought you needed us." Her brother rolled his eyes. "Wow. Nice. I guess blood really isn't thicker than water when you've got money, huh?" Her stepfather leaned back, arms crossed. "You're acting like we're strangers, Ava. We're family. Families share. Or at least they're supposed to." She backed down within minutes. The guilt was crushing, familiar, suffocating, well practiced. She told herself she was overreacting. She told herself they meant well. She told herself that keeping the peace was worth more than keeping her own space. And so the pattern solidified. They ate her groceries. They used her electricity, her water, her Wi-Fi. They borrowed her car when theirs was in the shop. They asked, never demanded, always asked with that soft, wounded tone, for a little help, with phone bills, motorbike repairs, hospital visits for distant cousins she barely knew. The house, once her quiet refuge, had become their convenience store, their free hotel, their safety net. And Ava, still reeling from the end of her marriage, still desperate to feel needed and wanted by someone, let it happen. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself it was what good daughters and sisters did. She told herself that love sometimes looked like sacrifice. But deep down, in the small, still place she rarely let herself listen to, a different truth was taking root. They didn't love her. They loved what she could provide. And the house, the last thing she had that was truly hers, was no longer a home. It was their resource, their shared asset, their ATM with 4 walls and a garden. The financial abuse didn't begin with loud arguments or outright theft. It began with guilt, with "we're family", with "you're doing so well you can afford it", with the slow, steady erosion of her right to say no. By the time she realized how far it had gone, the house no longer felt like hers at all. It felt like a trap she had helped them build, room by room, favor by favor, until the only door left open was the one that led straight back to serving them. And that was when the first real crack appeared in her long sleep of obedience. Because even the most patient heart can only be emptied for so long before it starts demanding to be filled again. Or before it finally decides to walk away and lock the door behind it. It started innocently enough, or at least it appeared that way. One evening, after another long day at the office, Ava came home to find the house unusually full. Not just her immediate family, but aunts, uncles, cousins, people she hadn't seen in months, gathered around the dining table like it was Tet holiday. The air smelled of fish sauce, lemongrass, and the sharp sweetness of her mother's famous caramelized pork. Laughter bounced off the walls. Someone had opened several bottles of cheap beer. The television murmured in the background, ignored. Ava paused in the doorway, still holding her laptop bag, surprised but not unhappy. She hadn't expected company, but maybe this was a good sign. Maybe they were finally coming together just to be together. She smiled, set her things down and joined them. That was when the stories began. It was her cousin Min who started it, leaning back in his chair with a grin, beer bottle dangling from his fingers. "Remember that time I told Ava my landlord was kicking me out because I was 2 months behind on rent? I called her crying at like 2 in the morning. She transferred 15 million right away. No questions, no receipts. Said she didn't want me sleeping on the street." He laughed, shaking his head like it was the fondest memory. "Bought myself that new iPhone instead. The landlord never even knew I existed." The table erupted in laughter. Someone slapped the tabletop. Ava's smile froze in place. Her Aunt Lan picked up the thread smoothly, as if they'd rehearsed the sequence. "Oh, and the dental emergency. I called her last year saying I had a terrible toothache, needed emergency root canal, 20 million or I'd lose the tooth. She sent it within the hour. I was so grateful. I used half to get my nails done and the rest for that weekend trip to Vung Tau with the girls. My tooth was fine, by the way, just a little sensitive." More laughter. Her mother nodded approvingly, wiping her hands on a napkin. Ava's always been so generous. Such a good heart. Her Uncle Term, usually quiet, decided to contribute. He cleared his throat, voice thick with mock solemnity. I told her my motorbike was stolen, said I needed money for a new one so I could get to work. She sent 30 million, said she didn't want me losing my job. I kept the old bike, fixed it myself for 2 million, and used the rest to pay off my credit card. Haven't ridden public transport since. The room was warm with shared amusement now, the kind of easy, conspiratorial warmth that comes from people who know they've gotten away with something together. Her younger brother, sprawled on the couch with his phone, chimed in without even looking up. Mine was the easiest. Mental health crisis. That's all I had to say. Sent me 25 million for therapy sessions. I went to Jalat for 4 days with my girlfriend instead. Best vacation ever. She never even asked how the sessions went. One by one, they went around the table like it was a twisted game of show and tell. Cousin Huang, the fake hospital bill for her child's high fever that turned into a new wardrobe. Aunt Mai, the car accident repair that funded a down payment on a new handbag collection. Uncle Vin, the business investment opportunity that became a gambling trip to Cambodia. Each story was delivered with the same casual pride, the same gleeful recounting of how simple it had been. How Ava never pushed back, how she never asked for proof, how she always answered on the first ring, voice full of worry and love. They spoke of her the way hunters speak of a reliable game trail, predictable, generous, easy to lead. Ava sat at the end of the table, hands folded in her lap, listening. She didn't interrupt. She didn't cry. She didn't storm out. She simply absorbed it, all of it, like cold water seeping into cracked earth. Every transfer she had ever made flashed through her mind in perfect, painful clarity. The late-night messages, the panicked voice notes, the photos of bruised cars, swollen jaws, eviction notices, always slightly blurry, always conveniently missing key details. The way she had rearranged her budget, skipped vacations, delayed paying her own credit card, just so she could help. She had told herself it was temporary. She had told herself family was supposed to lean on each other. She had told herself that being the reliable one was her role, her value, her way of earning love. Now she understood. They hadn't been leaning. They had been mining. Systematically, deliberately, proudly. She looked around the table at the flushed faces, the easy smiles, the way they toasted each other's cleverness, and felt something inside her finally give way. Not with a crash, but with a slow, deliberate fracture. This wasn't occasional need. This wasn't occasional desperation. This was a routine, a shared family project. A collective understanding that Ava existed to be harvested. And the worst part, they didn't even feel guilty. They felt clever. They felt entitled. They felt she owed them. For raising her, for putting up with her, for simply being related. Her mother reached over and patted her hand, still smiling. "You're so quiet tonight, Con. Eat something. We're just reminiscing." Ava looked down at the hand on hers. Small, familiar. The same hand that had stroked her hair when she was little. The same hand that had accepted every transfer with a quick, "Thank you, honey." She didn't pull away. Not yet. But inside, the last of her illusions was burning away. She had spent years thinking she was the giver in a family of givers. Now she saw the truth. She was the only one giving, and they had turned it into sport. The stories kept coming, each one landing like another small stone on the pile that was crushing what remained of her trust. By the time the last bottle was empty and the last laugh had faded, Ava had made a quiet, internal decision. She would never again believe a single sob story. She would never again mistake manipulation for love. She would never again let guilt dictate her bank account. Because the family she had tried so hard to hold together had already tallied up their wins. They had their ledger, and every line in it was written in her blood and sweat. Now it was her turn to start keeping score, and this time, the numbers would look very different. The dining room still smelled faintly of last night's fish sauce and beer. The table hadn't been fully cleared. Empty bottles stood like sentinels, a few stray peanut shells scattered across the cloth. It was barely past 9 in the morning But the family was already gathered again. This time the mood was different, focused, conspiratorial, almost businesslike. Ava had come downstairs for coffee, intending to slip out early for work. Instead, she stopped at the top of the stairs, hidden by the half wall, and listened. Her mother was speaking in the low, measured tone she used when she was laying out a plan. Sophie's wedding is in 3 months. Liam's family is paying for the venue and the honeymoon, but they expect us to handle the rest: the dress, the photographer, the 10-table banquet at that new place in District 7. They're quoting at least 300 million dong just for the reception. We can't ask them to cover more. It would look bad, her brother snorted. 300 million? That's nothing compared to what Ava's got sitting in her accounts. She just got that year-end bonus, remember? And she's still single. No kids, no mortgage anymore since the divorce. She can afford it. Aunt Lan leaned forward, tapping a manicured nail on the table. Exactly. But we can't just come out and ask for the full amount. She's been quieter lately. Did you notice how she barely spoke last night? We need to make it feel like it's her idea. Or at least like she's the only one who can save the day. Stepfather nodded slowly, arms crossed. Guilt has always worked best. We remind her how much Sophie looked up to her growing up, how she was like a second mother when Sophie was little, how this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment for the family. If we frame it right, she'll feel like she's abandoning us if she says no. Her mother smiled, a small, satisfied curve of the lips. I'll start with the tears. I'll tell her I've been so stressed I can't sleep, that I'm worried the wedding will be a disgrace if we can't make it beautiful for Sophie. I'll say something like, Con oi, me hong muon kao shin, nhung neo, con jup jok mot chut, chi mot chut thoi. She always cracks when I cry. Uncle Term chuckled. And I'll follow up with the practical angle. Tell her it's not just for Sophie. It's for the whole family's face. Relatives are coming from the provinces. If the wedding looks cheap, they'll talk. Ava hates being the reason people gossip about us. Cousin Min raised his coffee cup like a toast. I'll handle the emotional blackmail part. I'll text her some old photos. Sophie as a baby in Ava's arms. That one from her high school graduation where Ava's hugging her from behind. Caption it. Remember when you said you'd always take care of us? She'll melt. Her brother grinned wider. And if she hesitates, I'll drop the big one. Liam's family already thinks we're not pulling our weight. If this wedding flops, Sophie might blame you, sis. You don't want her to start her marriage with resentment toward her favourite aunt, right? They all nodded, pleased with the choreography. The target figure floated casually into the conversation. 10 to 15,000 US dollars. Not all at once. No, that would scare her off. They'd break it into digestible pieces. First, just 50 million for the wedding dress and alterations. Then, another 80 for the banquet deposit. Then, emergencies. Extra flowers, better lighting. A last-minute makeup artist because the original one cancelled. Layer by layer, until the total quietly reached the amount they really wanted. She'll pay in installments anyway, her mother said with a shrug. She always does. We just have to keep the pressure steady. A call every few days. A sad selfie from Sophie in her half-finished dress. A group chat with everyone thanking her in advance. She'll cave before the second month. Ava stood motionless on the stairs, one hand gripping the banister so tightly her knuckles paled. She could hear every word, every calculated pause, every rehearsed line, every smug little laugh when they congratulated each other on how well they knew her buttons. This wasn't need anymore. This wasn't even greed in its raw, impulsive form. This was strategy. Cold, collaborative, shameless strategy. They weren't asking for help. They were executing a heist. And the mark, the same woman who had once believed, foolishly, desperately, that being useful was the same thing as being loved. Something shifted inside Ava then, not with fireworks or sudden shouting, not with tears or trembling. It was quieter than that, a door closing, a lock turning, a switch flipping from wounded to watchful. She no longer felt the familiar crush of guilt. Instead, she felt clarity. And beneath the clarity, something harder, sharper, more dangerous. Calculation. They had spent years teaching her exactly how they operated. Now she was finally paying attention. She backed silently up the stairs, returned to her room, and closed the door without a sound. She didn't slam it. She didn't need to, because the next time they came for her, with tears, old photos, sob stories, family honor, she would be ready. Not with anger, not with pleas, with a plan of her own. She sat on the edge of her bed, opened her laptop, and began typing. First, a list of every transfer she had ever made to every single person downstairs. Dates, amounts, purposes they had claimed. Next, screenshots of messages, voice notes, receipts she had stupidly saved just in case. Then, current balances, property deeds, bank statements, everything they thought she would never weaponize. She worked methodically, calmly. They wanted $10,000 to $15,000 for a wedding that would feed their pride and their pockets. She would give them something else instead, a mirror. And when they looked into it, they would finally see what they had created. Not a generous sister, not a dutiful daughter, but a woman who had learned, too late but not too late, how to stop bleeding for people who only knew how to cut. The wedding was coming in 3 months. So was the reckoning. And Ava was no longer planning to attend as the ATM. She was planning to attend as the one holding the ledger. And this time, the numbers were going to hurt them far more than they had ever hurt her. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding planning session Ava had overheard from the staircase. 2 weeks in which the house had returned to its usual rhythm of casual demands and casual entitlement. No one seemed to notice that Ava had grown quieter, not sullen exactly, but watchful. She smiled when they spoke to her. She answered texts promptly. She even laughed at her brother's lazy jokes over dinner. To them, everything was still on track. The bait had been set. The fish would bite soon enough. Then the call came. It was Linda, her cousin Sophie's best friend since high school, practical family by osmosis, who rang on a Thursday evening, just as Ava was finishing a late conference call in her room. The number flashed on her screen with the little heart emoji Linda had insisted on adding years ago. Ava let it ring twice before picking up. Ava? Sister, it's Linda, the voice came through, already trembling on the edge of tears. Perfectly rehearsed. I'm sorry to call at this hour, but I don't know what to do anymore. Ava leaned back in her chair, switched the phone to speaker and began recording the call on her laptop, something she had started doing religiously since that night on the stairs. Her voice stayed soft, concerning, exactly the way they expected. Linda, what's wrong? Your voice sounds strange. A long theatrical sniffle. Sister, Sophie and Liam's engagement party is next week. Everything is going well, but Liam's family wants to have a small party at a slightly upscale restaurant so the two families can meet officially before the wedding. They've already made the reservation, but the bill is much higher than expected. They said we have to cover the engagement party expenses, and Sophie's mother is extremely worried. I don't dare tell Sophie. I'm afraid she'll be upset. Ava made a sympathetic sound in her throat. How much is it? Linda hesitated just long enough to sound reluctant. Just $5,000 sister. 5,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but it includes everything. A private suite at a 5-star hotel in District 1, a high-end set menu, fresh flowers, commemorative photos, and even an MC. If it's not enough, then we'll lose face with my future in-laws. Sophie's mother said if you could help, then the whole family would be so grateful. You're the only one in the family who can manage this quickly right now. $5,000. Not for the wedding itself, that ask would come later, but for the pre-wedding engagement party, a shiny new layer in the ever-expanding cake of extraction. Ava let the silence stretch just long enough to make Linda nervous. "I understand," she said at last, her voice gentle. "Don't worry, I'll help. $5,000. I can transfer it, but I'm busy with some projects at the end of the month, and my account is a little tight. How about this? We pay up front, organize it nicely, and then I'll transfer it back to Mom or you next weekend. I promise." "I don't want Sophie to wait." Linda's relief was audible, a quick, grateful exhale. "Really? Oh my goodness, you're so kind. I'll tell Sophie's mom right away. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver for the whole family." They exchanged a few more pleasantries, Linda gushing about how Ava was the best big sister anyone could ask for, Ava murmuring modest denials, and the call ended with Linda promising to send the invoice just for reference. Ava set the phone down. She didn't smile, she didn't frown. She simply opened a new spreadsheet tab labeled Ledger Family Debts and added a fresh row. Date: October 29th, 2025. Requester: Linda, on behalf of Sophie's engagement party. Amount requested: $5,000. Claimed purpose: engagement party venue, food, decor. Actual status: family to front the money. Ava to reimburse later. Notes: recording saved. Invoice pending. She saved the file, encrypted it, and backed it up to an external drive she kept in a locked drawer. Downstairs, she could hear them already. Linda must have called her mother the second the line disconnected. Excited voices rose through the floorboards. Laughter, plans being made. Someone suggested upgrading the flowers since Ava was covering it anyway. Another voice proposed adding a photo booth. Why not? She's paying. They were jubilant. They were certain the money was as good as in hand. Ava stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the quiet street below. Streetlights flickered on one by one. A neighbor walked a small dog. Life continued outside this house as if nothing had changed, but inside everything had. For the first time in years, Ava felt no guilt. No panic, no desperate need to fix their problems so they wouldn't be disappointed in her. Instead, she felt calm. A cold, precise calm that reminded her of the moment before a major presentation at work, when every slide was ready, every number double-checked, every possible question anticipated. They thought they were setting a trap. They had no idea she had already stepped out of it. By letting them front the money themselves, she had shifted the power dynamic without them noticing. They would spend real cash, cash they didn't want to part with, expecting her reimbursement to arrive like clockwork. When it didn't, when the excuses started, when the pressure flipped, and they realized she wasn't going to pay, the cracks would appear. And she would be ready with documentation, with recordings, with a full accounting of every lie, every emergency, every dollar they had taken under false pretenses. This wasn't revenge in the loud, explosive sense. Not yet. This was preparation. This was patience. This was Ava finally playing the game at their level, only better. She closed the laptop, turned off the light, and went to bed early. Downstairs, the celebration continued late into the night. Upstairs, in the dark, Ava slept soundly for the first time in years, because the next move was hers, and when she made it, they would never see it coming. The night before the engagement party dawned quiet and ordinary, except that Ava had already decided it would be the last ordinary night this house would ever see. She had spent the previous 48 hours moving with the kind of deliberate calm that comes when someone finally stops waiting for permission to reclaim what is theirs. No dramatic announcements, no tearful confrontations, just preparation. At 9:17 p.m., while the rest of the family was still out celebrating at a karaoke bar downtown, laughing over draft beer about how Ava would come through like always, a plain white van pulled up to the curb without headlights. The driver cut the engine 2 houses away, coasted silently to the front gate and stepped out. His name was Damon, mid-30s, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain black hoodie and carrying a small canvas tool bag that clinked softly when he moved. Ava had found him through a discreet recommendation, from a colleague who had once needed to secure an apartment from an ex who wouldn't leave. Damon didn't ask questions. He quoted a flat rate in cash, arrived on time, and worked fast. That was all Ava needed. She met him at the side gate, handed him an envelope thick with bills, and led him inside without turning on the hallway lights. The house was dark except for the faint blue glow from the television her brother had left on standby. The living room already bore the early scars of tomorrow's celebration. Rented folding tables pushed against the walls, stacks of gold-trimmed napkins, centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath still wrapped in cellophane. Fairy lights coiled like sleeping snakes on the coffee table. Balloons, dozens of them. Silver and blush pink bobbed gently against the ceiling, tied with curling ribbons that spelled out Sophie and Liam in metallic foil. Ava looked at it all for one long moment, then turned to Damon. "Start with the locks," she said quietly. "Every exterior door, front, back, side gate, garage. New deadbolts, new keys, no master key copies." Damon nodded once, already unzipping his bag. He moved like someone who had done this kind of work before. Methodical, unhurried, efficient. Within 20 minutes, the front door's old lock lay in pieces on a drop cloth. A shiny new brass deadbolt took its place, then the back door, then the side entrance no one ever used, but everyone assumed they could. Each time the drill whined briefly, then fell silent. Each time a new key turned with a clean, satisfying click. While Damon worked, Ava began the second part of the plan. She started in the living room. One by one, she untied the balloons. Not popping them. That would have been petty, noisy, unnecessary. She simply snipped the ribbons close to the ceiling weights, gathered the strings in her fist, and carried armfuls of them out to the trash bins behind the garage. Silver orbs drifted past her in the moonlight like escaped dreams. She watched them settle into the black plastic bags without regret. Next came the centerpieces. She lifted each arrangement carefully, roses still fresh, petals soft, and placed them in cardboard boxes she had already lined up by the front door. The rented tables she folded and stacked against the wall in the garage. The fairy lights she unplugged, wound neatly, and boxed with the rest. Napkins, place cards, disposable champagne flutes. All of it went into clear storage bins she had bought that afternoon from a home goods store on the way home from work. She moved through the house like a curator dismantling an exhibition that had overstayed its welcome. In the dining room, she found the banner her mother had spent all afternoon hanging, a long white scroll hand-painted with gold calligraphy that read, "Congratulations, Sophie and Liam, forever starts tonight." Ava stood beneath it for a few seconds, reading the words in the dim light from her phone. Then she reached up, unpinned each corner, and rolled the banner carefully into a tube. She slid it into the same box as the flowers. By 11:42 p.m., the public spaces of the house looked almost as they had before the family began decorating. Spare, neutral, hers again. The only traces left were faint indentations on the carpet where tables had stood and a few stray rose petals she swept into a dustpan. Damon finished the last lock, the one on the small utility door leading to the backyard, and handed her a small ring holding 6 bright new keys. "Everything's secure," he said. "No one gets in without these. You want the old locks back in place later, just say the word." Ava shook her head. "No, they stay out." He gave a small nod, no judgment, no curiosity, and left as quietly as he had come. The van disappeared down the street without a sound. Ava locked the front door behind him. The new deadbolt slid home with a solid final thunk. She stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to the house settle around her. No voices, no laughter drifting from upstairs, no footsteps. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a neighborhood dog. This wasn't destruction. She hadn't smashed plates or torn curtains or spray-painted walls. She had simply removed what did not belong to them. The decorations had never been gifts. They had been bait, props in a performance designed to guilt her into opening her wallet one more time. By taking them down, by changing the locks, she was not punishing anyone. She was reclaiming ownership of the doors, of the rooms, of the silence, of herself. Tomorrow morning, when the family returned, hungover, excited, ready to finish setting up for the engagement party they assumed would proceed as planned, they would find the house locked, the decorations gone, and Ava sitting calmly in the kitchen with a pot of tea and 6 new keys laid out on the table like a quiet ultimatum. She had not slammed the door in their faces. She had simply turned the key. And this time, she would decide who, if anyone, ever turned it again. The house was hers once more. And so, finally, was her life.